My name is Blaise Aguirre. I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I've been a child and adolescent psychiatrist for more than 20 years. And for the last decade, I've been working with children and adolescents who are suicidal and self-destructive. When I was in high school, I remember there was a great friend of mine who played with me on the high school chess club. And one day he didn't return back to school. We wondered where he had gone, and the teachers told us that he was very sick. I asked if I could go visit him in the hospital, but they said that that wouldn't be possible. I asked if I could reach out to his parents, but they said that the parents were with him and couldn't be reached. Later on, I would find out that he had died by suicide. It was shocking for me to hear that he had died. That was 30, 35 years ago. Today the story is very different. Today the story is that 18% of kids in high school think seriously of suicide, and about 8% will make a significant attempt. That means that in any classroom, somewhere between 2 and 4 kids in the typical high school classroom are actively thinking about suicide or contemplating making an attempt. It's a very serious problem. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in children and adolescents. It kills more people than pneumonia, than AIDS, than heart disease, than stroke, than many other conditions combined. Children today are killing themselves at a higher rate than ever before. Young women are dying by suicide at the highest levels ever measured. Young men are not far behind. As a total number, young men are more likely to kill themselves by suicide than young women. Young women make more attempts. And whether you are for gun control or against gun control, we can all agree that keeping guns safe is an important preventative measure, because more than 50% of all completed suicides are by gunshot. When a child says that they're thinking of killing themselves, you always have to take that threat seriously. It's never attention seeking. In the rare circumstance where a child is using a suicidal threat for attention, the important thing to do is to teach them how to communicate their distress differently. But a suicidal threat is always to be taken seriously and always to be acted upon by the person hearing the threat. But what happens? How does it all start? Because very young children don't die by suicide. And we're certainly seeing that between the ages of 10 and 14, there's been a doubling in the amount of children dying by suicide. But something happens in adolescence. And what happens is that hormones begin to spike, social stress begins to increase, academic demands increase. We certainly know that some adolescents are at greater risk. Adolescents who are LGBTQ, adolescents who are in Native American populations, adolescents who have family members who have died by suicide, adolescents with mental illness, adolescents in homes with weapons, guns, adolescents who are exposed to bullying, to domestic violence, are at higher risk. So what is a school to do? We know that 4 out of 5 children with active suicidal thinking have histories of mental illness that are known to the family and to the school. And ideally, schools would work with mental health providers and the parents to have an active plan should the child become acutely suicidal or express suicidal intent. And that if a child were to express suicidal intent, the plan would be followed. But in a new case, or one where the plan seems to have changed, the conservative and right way to approach it would be to call 911, and that while emergency services are being accessed, to have someone stay with the child until the child is in professional mental health hands. We've come up with the acronym CONNECT as a way of thinking about the various options a school has in order to address the question of suicide. The C stands for create awareness. It's extremely important to talk to children about suicidal thinking and other mental health issues. It does not increase suicidality in speaking about it. It would be as if saying that talking about broken legs led to an increase in broken legs. In fact, the opposite is true. When we speak about suicide and mental health issues, we actually destigmatize them, bring them into the open, and create the kind of awareness that allows for reduction of suicidality and improve mental health outcomes. We want to open communication between teachers and parents, teachers and students, teachers and administrators, and even teachers and mental health experts to destigmatize and demystify something that impacts all of us, something that is happening in our families and in our communities, and by having open discussion between the various groups, and in particular between the student and the teacher, to address concerns directly without fear of punishment or judgment. We want to say no to loneliness. We know that loneliness and isolation is lethal. We want to have groups beyond the sports groups. We want to have diverse groups that include members of every community, of those who are most likely to feel isolated, the minority status groups. We want to encourage inclusion in all of those groups. We want to make sure that we note every child's concern. What this means is that when children come and say to a person, to a teacher, that they're worried about X, Y, Z, it may not be the biggest problem in the world, but what it models for the child is that they can come to a teacher and express their concern, that they can ask for help, that their concern is legitimate. That doesn't mean that the school has to respond immediately, but it says to the child, I hear you. And if something can be done, then it is done. But it doesn't dismiss the child's concern. It legitimizes it, validates it. We want to encourage self-directed activities. It turns out, in fact, that schools that have more self-directed activities have fewer levels of depression and anxiety. Kids are under so much stress to perform for specific tasks in specific courses. But creativity heals, and being creative because of self-directed activities allows children to engage with others and come up with problems and solutions that others hadn't considered. It doesn't have to be within a curriculum, but have a couple of hours a week of self-directed activities. We want people to connect in real time. We talked about the benefits of social media, but the perils as well. Have an emoji-less conversation where the LOLs are left out or the TTYLs are left out. Say to each other what is happening in real time. Let each other see each other's face. Have a discussion about the impact of digital connection at a time when digital connection has overridden the millions of years of human development. Set aside some time for that real connection. We want schools to have within their curriculum a teaching of social emotional skills. Adolescents today have less of an ability of tolerating distress, of regulating strong emotions, of being effective interpersonally, and of staying present than ever before. The teaching of these skills as part of the curriculum will teach the kids to know about themselves, and in that way interact with each other in ways that we know are central to inoculating them against many of the mental health concerns of today. And finally, we want to identify specific helpers in the community. The School Counseling Association tells us that there are 406 students to every school counselor who are the trusted members of our community who can help. Other trusted parents, teachers interested, clergy interested, neighbors interested, peers interested, setting up peer support groups. Some years ago, I bumped into the brother of my friend, the one in high school who had died by suicide. I asked him if he knew any more about what had happened, and he told me that his brother had been traumatized, but that he didn't know who to turn to. Suicide is the manifestation of the scourge of isolation, of despair, and of hopelessness. Mental health professionals are certainly important, but we can all do something. We can all create awareness. We can all communicate with each other in open, non-judgmental ways. We can include people who are feeling disenfranchised and isolated. We can listen to every child's concern. We can understand more about mental illness and mental wellness. And in so doing, we connect with the broader community. And this connection is the antidote to reducing today's adolescent suicide crisis.